have any specific destination to which they want to reach. All they're trying to do is get inside a car, rev it up, make as much noise as possible, maybe a little skidding here and there, try to attract the attention of girls, and all they do is drive around the block. Now, if someone didn't have that intention, someone had a vision, someone used the car as a vehicle, as a means of transportation, not as a means of skidding and making noise, but as a vehicle to reach point B, starting with point A. Now, both of these people have had their ride in the car, but there is a huge difference in terms of how each one of these scenarios plays out, isn't there? One scenario might play out in the way that the people driving around, trying to skid, trying to attract attention, trying to make noise, are very likely to be involved in an accident in the end. Whereas the other person takes all safety precautions, has a vision, has a clear path, has set the way he needs to pursue in order to reach his destination. They both drive in the car. They probably both enjoy driving the car, enjoy accelerating by pressing on the accelerator pedal. But one gets involved in an accident, the other reaches the destination safely. Nobody's telling you to abandon the pleasures of this world. قُلْ مَنْ حَرَّمَ زِينَةَ اللَّهِ الَّتِي أَخْرَجَ لِعِبَادِهِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran. On one occasion, I believe it was the commander of the faithful who was told about 3 people. One of them had decided not to sleep, except when it was absolutely necessary, and to spend their entire lives, his entire life, to pray and to adore and to worship the Almighty Lord. The other, and they created a pact between the 3 of them. The other said, I will never get married, I will never get close to a woman. The third said that I will abandon the city and urban life, and I will go inside a cave, and I will stay there until I die. The Imam called the 3 of them. When they came, the Imam said to them, Ya adiyya nafsik. He addressed one of them. He said, Ya adiyya nafsik. Adu in the Arabic language means enemy. The Imam isn't saying, oh, you who is the enemy of himself. Adi is the lesser version of the word adu. In other words, you're a little petty enemy of yourself. In other words, you're an enemy of yourself, and yet you don't get it. Nobody is saying we should abandon the pleasures of this world. So once again, why is it that they're having fun, and we're all sitting here waiting for the end of the speech where we will cry and get depressed? To understand the reason, and once again, I'm not saying everybody thinks that way, but there might be people who might have had that thought cross their mind. To understand why we do this, we need to understand the purpose of our lives. What is the purpose of our lives? We talked about how the purpose is to reach perfection, and how there are specific pathways we need to take until we reach perfection. And that perfection, ultimate perfection, absolute perfection, exists only with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to do that, there are steps that we need to undertake. The first is to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And inshallah, in the subsequent nights, we'll be talking more specifically about these steps and elaborate on them. But to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to worship the Almighty Lord, that's the purpose of our lives as prescribed in the Holy Quran. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. I have not created the jinn or the ins, humanity and every living thing that exists and has the faculty of the intellect, which includes the jinn, except so that they would worship me. Of course, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala isn't gaining anything about me offering my worship, my acts of worship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that's a different topic, we'll talk about it later on. To worship God. Which is why Imam al-Hussein is special. And Imam al-Hussein deserves our tears. Imam al-Hussein deserves our tributes. Imam al-Hussein deserves our time, our energy, our resources, our attention, our money, our wealth, our lives. Because he was the one who openly and transparently and unequivocally explained to us what the purpose of our lives is. Had it not been for Imam al-Hussein, let me tell you something, I'll make a bold statement here, and I mean no disrespect. Had it not been for Imam al-Hussein and what he did on the day of Ashura, you and I and everyone else in existence would be another replica, an exact carbon copy of Yazid ibn Muawiyah. Why? It's very simple. Because as human beings, unrestricted by obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we are nothing but beasts who roam around in an effort, in an attempt to satisfy our desires. That's why the beast needs to be tamed. And we have so many traditions that specifically refer to the human soul as a beast that needs to be tamed. Like a wild horse, one hadith says. It's like a wild horse. How do you control a wild horse? You hold him tight. That's what you do. You don't let it roam freely in the field. You hold him tight. Imam al-Hussein made sure that we don't end up like Yazid. Because as human beings, our ultimate pursuit is the satisfaction of our desires. Let's imagine, and this is probably an inappropriate example, but it really does illustrate what I'm talking about here. Imagine if all of us sitting here tonight suddenly found ourselves without any restraints whatsoever. No moral restraints, no social restraints, because social restraints and social incentives are very, very powerful. That's why you see in certain countries, I don't know about here in the UK, but in certain countries, people who commit crimes of moral reptitude, for example, pedophiles. Pedophiles are advertised on a website in the United States. If you want to know if there is a particular pedophile in the particular neighborhood that you're trying to reside in, all you got to do is log on to this website and find out how many pedophiles live there. They have to register with the local governments, with the local authorities, with a parole officer. Throughout their lives, one person commits pedophilia, God forbid, and he or she needs to be identified so that people are aware of this individual, so they take all precautions. In some countries, for example in the UAE, if someone crosses a red light, there's a whole newspaper page dedicated to people's number plates being printed on that page. So people are deterred from committing this crime again. How are they deterred? Well, if you see your number plate in the newspaper and your friends see it and they come back and tell you, or if they see your picture, right? It's humiliating, right? I mean, it's absolutely humiliating, especially if you're a respectable member of the community. So the moral incentive and the moral deterrent and the moral restraint is very, very powerful. But let's just imagine, for the sake of the argument, suddenly here tonight we find ourselves, we are not restrained by morality, we're not restrained by religion, we're not restrained by humanity, we're not restrained by anything. We wouldn't survive 5 minutes if there were no restraints. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to tame the beast. Why would we all be exact replicas of Yazid ibn Muawiyah? Because we're all out there, human beings in general, I'm talking, people who are not restrained, people whose beasts are not tamed. They're out there trying to satisfy desires and nothing else. Feed into temptations, fuel the fire. And Yazid is the ultimate example of how one can feed the desires that are built into him. Why? Because with authority, you can do anything you want. If I had the power, if I had authority, if I had prestige, if I had the political backing that Yazid did, I would do anything if left unrestrained. We'd all be carbon copies of Yazid ibn Muawiyah. With Imam Hussein, the situation take a very, very different course. Imam Hussein said, for example, in one of the very famous statements that he made, on the day Al-Walid, who was the governor of the city of Medina, summoned the Imam to come. It was night, the Imam knew what it was about. He took along with him a group of the Banu Hashim, and he instructed them, he said, if you hear my cry, if you hear me calling out for you, then you should know that I'm being attacked, that I'm being apprehended, you should come and save me. They were all waiting, their hands on their swords, on the handle of the swords. They waited outside, the Imam went inside. Al-Walid was there. He told Imam al-Hussein, he told him, I'm sure you've heard news about Muawiyah's death. And now, his son Yazid ibn Muawiyah has assumed the throne of the government, the throne of his father. It suddenly became a monarchy. It started out with people imposing their authority, with people claiming to become the Khalifa, the self-proclaimed Khulafa. That's how it started. Because you know the difference between bay'ah and to nominate or elect someone. I'm sure you've heard this argument when you talk about the Khilafah system. They tell you the Khilafah system was perfect because it was another version of free democratic elections, right? And that way they sugarcoat it and they make it sound really beautiful and civilized and democratic. That's what it was. That's not what it was.